Check WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. If you're watching out on Facebook Live or on our YouTube WNSTV channel, you'll see that I am donning the Super Bowl 35 Hawaiian Floridian logoed shirt, and I only break this out for special occasions. I didn't break it out this week with Jack Del Rio or Mike Smith. I don't even break it out with Brian Billick, although it's his week. But I tell you what, his ears must be burning somewhere up there in Chowderland. Mike Flynn, the main event, the original main event, his name was brought up many, many times at Greenmount Station over crab cakes with Pat Ricard, our two-way Maine Black Bear. Flynn, I almost choked when Ricard said to me, I said, I know Mike Flynn. He's like, Mike Flynn, there's a shrine to him in the locker room in Orono. And I'm like,
it's a little much, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he'd probably tell you that, but I mean, I like it. I mean, I text you back. I said, let's Ricard know who's the big dog up there.
Well, and I read that text, minus the the language that we use, that the locker room talk we use between. How are you? It's good to visit with you. It's nice to visit when the Red Sox aren't going to be playing next week. So, I mean, from the Baltimore perspective, we've got that going on as well. But this is a fascinating time, and you and I haven't talked in a long time, not even like sort of as friends. Like, we get crabs once in a while. Like, we haven't caught up. This Lamar thing is something, right? I mean, and I know the last time we talked, Marshall Yonda's name was involved because you played with him. Now you've got this link to a guy that they said, hey, we're going to give this kid the ball. We're going to have him run around. He might learn how to throw it better, but, man, can he run? And all of a sudden, Eric DeCosta looks smart, and the Ravens look real smart right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's a unique guy, at least for the NFL anyway, right? I mean, and a lot of quarterbacks start out that way where they're the dual threat. Then they get to the next level of the NFL, and they still have the read options, the RPOs, and stuff like that. But they're kind of building a offense tailored around him, and it's great. And actually, I'm coaching high school football, and I have a quarterback who he like Lamar, just a gamer, gritty guy. Makes plays for you, but maybe not obviously much better than the kid that I have, but I pick up some of the stuff that the Ravens are doing because it's pretty unique in how they get him in space, how they play action, how they run the ball. So, there's work there. Greg Roman's a good guy to do that, right? At Stanford was pretty multiple, and when he was at San Francisco, it was pretty multiple offense. So
now, you didn't cross paths with him, right? Like, you sort of went out as he came in?
I did. No, he was a coach of mine.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the assistant offensive line coach when I was there. So, but his style certainly fits to what they want to do. I mean, it's certainly, I don't know obviously the personal fit with Lamar Jackson and that group there, but certainly his coaching style and how he wants to scheme things up and his philosophy fits great with that team. And you've seen it, at Stanford and running the ball and a lot of different personnel groupings they use to kind of run the same play to get after guys. And then certainly even out in San Francisco and similarities there, but he's a perfect guy for that offense, and it's fun to watch. I like running the ball and having a chance to see him up here, but yeah, I mean, you felt that transition was due, and there always was going to be concern that, the NFL at the end of the day, still you need to throw the ball to win, in my opinion, that can he transition to take what he does best, but also work on those things that he struggles with, it's recognition, dropping back, and that kind of stuff. And so far, it's been okay. Obviously good defense, that kind of stuff, but the transition's been pretty good, and they're doing a great job putting an offense around him that works for him.
I think the biggest thing was a buy-in, right? And not just from, like, Marshall or anyone. You don't buy in, you're going to be gone, right? I mean, that's the way the league works, right? But more than that, not just a buy-in, a belief, You had Joe Flacco here last year. You draft a guy that no one in the league wanted, right? Everybody in the league said he's not a first-rounder. He's not a guy you build a team around because you don't build a team around quarterbacks that run into linebackers, right? And there's a long line of that. And when you do say to Nick Boyle or you say to the guys that were already here, this is the way we're going to play, I'm sure the first thing is, well, that's not the way the league plays. The league plays with big drop-back quarterbacks, and that's the way everything's schemed up. That is the NFL style. that's been a big problem in football since your era, right? Is that the college game is so different than the pro game, and trying to get round to fit into square, that when you're out scouting, and all the scouts know this, all the NFL people know, it's hard to watch college football and then project player X into team Y, into scheme Z in the NFL, and say that guy's going to be able to make a transition to wherever the hashtags are, hash marks are on the field, or whatever the design of your offense is going to be, or what you're asked to do. I mean, wide receivers come into the NFL bewildered, right? Because the system's so different. And now the Ravens have said, well, maybe we should just go with the system they already know to some degree. This was a pretty controversial thing 18 months ago. It was pretty controversial most of the summer when they jettisoned Flacco and said, yeah, he's going to become a better passer. And now we're a couple of weeks into it. And honestly, Mike, they're asking Joe who here. Like, Flacco's 0-3 in Denver. This team gives itself a chance to win every week. You get a chance to have a first down every time you have the ball. And you have down and distances that are doable, you know?
I mean, it certainly helps with, having watched some of the games last year. I felt the transition from Flacco to a new guy was there. I think with Joe, I think his time was done here. So I think that natural transition, but the style that they went to, right, was pretty unique. But it is. To your point, it is hard to evaluate talent at the second level. I mean, from college to the professional level. I mean, receivers, just the physicality in the NFL is so much different than college, right? And then the quarterback with the system and, coaches, constantly calling the plays from the sideline, not having to adjust much. So, it's pretty different. That's what your evaluation team, right? Your GM, your scouts have to cut through all the BS and have their prototypes in their mind that say, this quality fit with us, even though he's in this scheme, and you got to bring it over, and eventually you have enough of hits or misses, right? You kind of narrow down what you think should translate. But it certainly is. I mean, I've heard that from, a lot of coaches and personnel guys. It's just evaluating guys is so much harder because of the spread, and then certainly even defensively, right? Like you're defending the spread and scheme, and it's hard to get a beat what they're all about. So it is interesting, and I remember with the Redskins with Robert Griffin, they kind of went out there a little bit, and there are good athletic running quarterbacks. I mean, Andrew Luck was one, Cam Newton, Robert Griffin III. There's other ones.
You just mentioned three guys who've basically been executed in the middle of the field and had their career.
Yeah.
I mean, literally.
Maybe those aren't the three best guys, though, right? Yeah, I mentioned three guys that are like,
why don't you talk to me about
out of the league?
No, but seriously, why don't you talk to me about Tom Brady and about Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, the guys who the entire design is to make sure they never get touched. Make sure that they wake up Monday morning feeling good. You know what I mean? Like, literally.
Jimmy Garoppolo at San Francisco, if you watch him play, getting the ball out quick, there's certainly longevity to that. And, when you're talking about the health of a franchise and how important the quarterback is to your franchise, I mean, longevity is part of it, right? I mean, you're in an era now that if you're, self-motivated, competitive, a football player, quarterback, I mean, you could play over a decade, 15-plus years. So, longevity, is a part of the equation. So that type of quarterback is great for the franchise. With that said, finding a guy that you can win with is really hard to do in this league. And when they were evaluating quarterbacks and they were evaluating the position, I said, hey, listen, Lamar Jackson's a guy that we can win with. They drafted him. That's kind of the hand you're dealt now. Does it last 8 or 10 years? History tells you it doesn't. Just because at some point, if it's not the big hit, it's the wearing down of the course of a lot of years. And that was more with Andrew Luck. Now, his fault wasn't so much running as his line was a sieve, but, eventually they'll get to you. These running guys, they'll get to you eventually because they're faster than you are. That's just the way it is, and they'll scheme for you. But, with look around the league and the quarterbacks and the quality of play at that position, if you have a guy that you can win with, and you're trying to keep your job, and you're trying to win games, and, he's the guy you have. And they've done a great job putting them in offense where they could be successful and put up points. They put up points and with play action, all that kind of stuff. So, Sometimes it's like, hey, he's a guy that we need a transition from Joe. Let's get him. Yeah, we may have to tweak some things, but certainly I don't know what the long-term viability of it is, but we could be good for 3 or 4 years. So if that's the run you have, that's what you do. I mean, that's kind of the hand you're dealt.
I was lucky enough to meet Mike Flynn in the locker room when he was a practice squad slappy, undrafted guy from Maine, sort of like Pat Ricard. And we're watching Pat Ricard do that right now. You can follow Mike Flynn at Flynn985 out on Twitter. And, your insights into all this and you being on radio and talking football and talking Patriots and really being in that sort of watching that every week and watching them just literally dismantle everybody still and Brady doing all of this. The Ravens trying to do something different, and now the Steelers with Roethlisberger gone, that their empire's over, right? Trying to go about this a different way, and Harbaugh's called it revolution, right? Like literally, that's the word he uses. And when you see them going on 4th and 1 from the 34, and I know you played a little blackjack and blown on the dice in your day, and you're a little bit of a scientist, and you watch the Red Sox, and you're into Saber and being nerdy and all of that stuff. That's what a Maine education does these days, Flinner. But on the football side, we're seeing the analytics get involved here, where I'm in the back of the press room. And I say to John Harbaugh, are you going to go on 4th and short from anywhere on the field? He looks at me and sort of deadpans, anywhere on the field, anytime. That's what the analytics tell us. That's what the numbers tell us. Then he goes back and supports it on Monday. The game has changed. Flynn, you've been out of the game a decade. I mean, the way the tackling, the way hitting the quarterback, the way pass interference, the way holding it. Almost every part of the game, including RPOs and 2-point conversions and 35-yard extra points, they've really changed the game dramatically if you go back and watch a football game from the Super Bowl 35 run. Like literally, right?
Yeah, the style of play certainly. I mean, what you need to win offensively, it's a totally different game. And
the level of violence as well, by the way. That's the first thing that jumps out on you. The level of violence of your era versus now. What could
the part of it is scheme, right, from college and these coordinators now and what they want to try to accomplish. The other part is rules-based, right, with taking head hits away, which I obviously don't have a problem with, but increasing, pass interference and holding calls and illegal touching, which ups the ante offensively, protecting the quarterbacks. So there's two different, ways this has changed. And then philosophy of coaches. You mentioned the analytics part of it. And, sometimes it's like you can get caught up in it. And I get it. The numbers say this, but there's context to every call, right? You need to be in the game. It's not like, hey, 4th down at 1 on the 30 says we need to go to it. We need to go for 2. It says or go for a 4th down. It says 75% of the time you could get it, blah, blah, blah. But there's always context to the game, right? Who's hurt? Who's healthy? How's your offense been playing? How's the other defense been playing? Are you up or you're down? So, the analytics bringing that into the game is fine, but I do feel that there's context to every call, that every game is different, every situation is different. So even though this number tells you that it's the best time to go for 2, it's not an excuse when somebody asks you why you did it, right? There's other circumstances involved. But yeah, it has changed. It's a totally different game. And it probably starts from college, with the spread offenses and the big points. I mean, listen, good defenses. I know the New England is pretty good on defense right now. They're not really playing anybody, but good defenses still give up points and yards, right? Just because how they're kind of handcuffed on some of the rules. But it's a totally different game. Whether one's better or different, certainly. I don't know if it's better, but that's kind of the hand these coaches are dealt with in terms of. I'm talking about the defensive coaches and what they can't do and can do.
Mike Flynn is our guest. He, of course, the original Maine event. You can hear Pat Ricard, the other Maine Black Bear. What do you think about that, man? Two-way football player. You imagine that, right? So he literally leaves meetings early to go from one room to the other and misses out on some stuff because that's where he is, and they want him to be a battering ram fullback and also to get after the quarterback because he can do that a little bit too.
Well, when I first got in the league, the biggest thing the coaches would, the more you can do, right? Make yourself valuable. I mean, you be more valuable than a guy that can play offense and defense, right? And the thought
And special
that would
teams,
be like,
by the way, yes.
Yeah, special teams too. It's like he plays all phases of the game. And obviously their offensive style, the need for that fullback and that punishing type blocker is huge. So, he's carving out a niche for himself in the league, but with this team, so it's pretty cool. Plus, he's a main guy, right, and free agent guy, and
a mass guy too, right?
Worcester area.
Worcester yeah, absolutely. And you know what? His cadence and diction is the same as yours. Like, everybody up there has the weird accent. I mean, your mother has it a little bit, But like you and he, when you speak, it sounds like maybe there's an Orno accent. I don't know what it is, but
well, it's not the true, the
dialect,
East Boston accent, but I think everybody from the Northeast. But then again, no, I mean, I notice. Down in Maryland and Baltimore, my Lord, like when I hear that, it's like so distinctive to me. I mean, you may or may not notice it, but I notice it also.
Oh, I know what you mean, Mike Flynn.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, you like that? I can turn it on, man. I can turn it on anytime. I can do a whole segment. We're putting Brian Billick in the Ring of Honor this year, and he's deserved that for so long, and they finally putting him in. What do you think about that, Flinner?
Well, I mean, he's the first coach in that franchise, right, that won a Super Bowl. I mean, he had a great winning percentage.
He was a sponsor of yours.
He some credibility. What's that?
He believed in you, right? I mean, he changed your life.
Well, he believed in me. I mean, I owe him the world. I mean, a lot of it as a coach and, I mean, as a player, right, you need, especially an offensive line position, right? There's some subjectiveness to it, right? Like, we don't have stats. But yeah, my mentality, my demeanor, my attitude is kind of what he wanted. And he trusted me, and he when he was here, it was perfect for me. I fit into the offense, what he tried to do, zone blocking, all that kind of stuff. So, and Coach Jim Cletto was there for a while, so it was perfect for me. I certainly owe him a lot, and then to Art before that, giving me that opportunity, and Ozzie. But Brian was always good to me. I always thought he was a good coach, and I think his first year that he came in, he was the perfect coach, right? He's a player's coach, but Well,
you're fascinating because you played for Marchibroda. You played your first game in Chicago. I remember on that cold day. Marchibroda was his thing was ending. You were your first step in the league was, hey, this group of guys put me on the field on this bad team. There's going to be a whole new regime coming in here. And that 6-month period when Brian came in, you witnessed the billboards go up when you were driving and hot tub clubbing out there in March and April and May, literally trying to make the team, right? Like literally fighting for your career at that point.
Yeah, and he came in and he changed the culture, right? It was made it about the players, right? That everybody else's job in the facility was to do everything they can to make it easier for the players to win a game. And now the way teams practice, it's pretty much the standard. But Brian had some similar qualities back then in terms of, real padded practice and afternoon, just the shells, a special teams practice, right? Didn't kill you in meetings. And that was very, very revolutionary back then. The only other guy, and he got that from Dennis Green out in Minnesota. And, obviously he had to have the right team, and he did. He had a lot of self-motivated veterans. He had a lot of youth in certain positions that were hungry. And it was a good combination where he had a hell of a run there from like 99 to like 2003. Probably should have won more games, certainly. Probably should have won more playoff games, but that's a whole other discussion. But, he came in and just changed the whole culture of the team. And he was a perfect personality for it. I mean, Brian really well, but he's got the bravado, and he likes to talk crap, and
Brian's one of my favorite people on earth.
He's very brash.
I'm writing about that this week, about just and I think somewhat misunderstood to some degree. You know what I mean? Like if you had a sense of humor, you could really you could really deal with Brian. And I think people thought Brian was serious and full of himself, arrogant, arrogant, egotistical. He would call himself all that stuff.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There was some of that there. I mean, listen, this guy is an innocent, but But yeah, he had that arrogance. He had some ego. He was brash, but the team, it was great with that team that we had those years, right? It was
a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun.
And then he had the background of communications, and he used to love the sparring with the media. I mean, I think a lot of that was just a game for him. I think he liked it. I think he's probably one of the few coaches that probably liked going in front of the podium. You know what I mean? Whether you win or whether you lose. I don't think he minded at all. So, personally for me, I owe him a lot. But yeah, he was perfect for that, for the franchise, and perfect for that team. And it was a lot of fun, because the Colts were gone, and Baltimore was just, like you could feel it. It was just like, you could cut it with a knife, the anticipation of like, we got a football team, let's win some games. And when it happened, it was awesome. And not that the team now is different, but listen, they've sold out the stadium for years, right? There's the Ravens Roost and stuff, but I just felt it was like, I got to be a part of it when it was, not that it was new, it was fresh, right? Because the Colts were gone and everybody was embracing the Ravens, and now you had a winner, and it was a big screw you to the league office. I mean, it was an exciting time, and there was a lot of energy for those 2 or 3 years from like 99 to 2001, and I put that group together because there was a lot of similar players, right? After that, then the veteran guys kind of either got released, retired, got traded, whatever it may be, right? And it kind of, things changed over a little bit, but when those first 3 years of Brian, it was awesome. Like, there was so much energy in the city, and he was like the perfect coach. And, I remember going down to Tennessee for that playoff game, and they had the video of him like hammering Tennessee. They must have took a picture of it or video of it in the locker room, and he was all fired up, and it was the perfect coach, perfect team for him. It was a sometimes when you make a decision, a lot of it is luck, and they got Art got it right and David got it right, and it was just this perfect like chemistry for those teams.
You mentioned a Tennessee thing and the screaming with a spear and the Banshees and the whole deal, right?
I love that. I still use that line, by the way. You don't tippy. I do
you
that.
Don't tippy toe into the den.
I coach high school. I use it with my kids. It's unbelievable. It's one of the greatest lines. And he may have stole that, but that's what I attribute it to, and I love that line. You don't go tippy-toeing into the lion's den. You bring in a spear and say, "Where's the son of a bitch?" I mean, I freaking love, and it's true though. But I still use that.
Well, Mike Flynn is here. He is Flynn985 out on Twitter. Look, I could sit here all day and tell Billick stories, and we've been doing that all week and honoring the coach and what he's meant to my life, your life. I feel similarly indebted because if they had hired Terry Donahue back then, you know what I mean? Or,
yep.
I can think of any number. I don't even want to indict any of the Browns coach, the Chris Palmers. I mean, I wrote Purple Rain about this, and, I felt a copy of it the other day because I was thinking about Brian and out at the radio station and seeing pictures of you and me and Spence holding up the Tennessee newspaper the day after. I think Anthony Mitchell was in that picture. He's our Facebook friend, and I saw him at dinner last year when he came in for 35. I said to my wife, one of the real joys of my life was not just that championship, but 20 years later, how much I like all of you and how much many of you like me and how much fun it was and what an incredible series of events that took place. But you mentioned that Tennessee game and what happened. I show that game on bus trips, right, to Pittsburgh and New England, whatever. And so we have that game on DVD. No commercials in it. It just cuts in and cuts out. At halftime, maybe it was Bonnie Bernstein, Tafoya, I don't know, whoever it was, went over to Brian to get his halftime going into the locker room. And Brian said some of the snidest, crazy stuff, you know what I mean? That would be all over Twitter now, right? You know what I mean? but that you look back and we won and it was great and Ray stole the ball from Eddie George and Del Greco missed the kicks and Anthony, all that stuff. Man, it was 20 years ago, but when you put it back on, the emotion, and that's literally what I was thinking about when I mentioned 20 minutes ago to you about the violence in the league. I think of that game, right? Like, that game was violent. Like, the hits that Ray Lewis put on Eddie George, everyone would be a 30-yard penalty 20 years later, right? And the Oakland game, when you see Saragusa land on just the violence in the game. And I put those videos on all the time when I do these bus trips. So I see them once a year, every year, kind of, sort of. And that's the part of it that immediately jumps out at you about the game of football.
Well, I mean, the Tennessee game more than the Oakland game, but there was a lot of history there too, though. That started in '99 and went all the way through 2001. It was the same cast of characters, 3 games a year, 2 games a year. So there was some bad blood there, and it was the personalities too. I mean, and then the style, Jeff Fisher, and they wanted to run the ball and stop the run. We wanted to run the ball and stop the run. So it just set up for one of those types of brutal type of games. But yeah, thinking back to, I don't know how I did it. I just got sore, my back sore thinking about it. But they were fun though, man. They were fun because Baltimore was always great. You went down to Tennessee. There was a time that stadium was rocking. Not to mention good town too. So yeah, those 3 years, and then you got the personal part of it. I'm just trying to establish myself in the league, and all of a sudden here I am surrounded by Hall of Famers, and making this run over the course of 3 years, divisional round, Super Bowl. I mean, it was great, and the city really embraced it. I mean, you could tell.
I have something weird to tell you about your mother and your family and Oakland that I just remembered. We won the game, right? And I remember being in the locker room with Goose in the Mickey Mouse shirt and the trophy on the floor and Burnett. And, I took some of those pictures, and I'm in the back of some of them. I was on the dais with the trophy with David Martin O'Malley somehow in that picture. Kevin Byrne and I took a picture with David with the trophy on the dais in the black hole. The whole stadium's empty. The game. Larry Rosen's in the back. Francine Lubera's in some of these pictures. So I have these pictures because I looked at them on the wall the other day, and I went into the locker room, did my thing, and I had a red-eye flight. My girlfriend at the time was waiting for me. Ray Bachman was with me on that trip, waiting for me, and we came out of that tunnel underneath of Oakland, up the top, and I remember walking out with you, and your mother and father were waiting for you at the top of the ramp, and then I just lost it. I got very emotional thinking about, we're in the friggin' Super Bowl. You know what I mean? I remember going back to the hotel room, which was right across the freeway there in Oakland, and I was, rinsing off the red-eye back to go to Philadelphia to do my national show, to come back to the barn. I think you weren't my guest that night. You were my guest after Tennessee. Maybe it was Edwin. I don't know. But either way, I was in the hotel room, and we put on ESPN, and there's Chris Berman with the Raven logo and the Super Bowl 35 logo and the Giants logo, and I lost it again. I was like, we're going to the Super Bowl. We didn't have a team here 4 years ago, Flynn, right? That's how outrageous all of it was.
Well, and that's what it felt, though. You kind of felt that, you know what I mean, which was kind of cool, the build-up to it. Even remember the old stadium, right? You could tell that they wanted a winner. They wanted to support the team, but when Brian came in, because there was a talented team there, and that was part of the reason why Ted ended up getting fired. He had 7 or 8 Pro Bowlers on the team in '97, and we ended up winning. I think we won 6 games. I can't even remember now. So there was talent there. It wasn't like the cupboard was bare, and it just needed to be pushed and prodded and moved around and had a different philosophy and culture. And certainly Brian came in and we took off.
He is Mike Flynn.
And honestly, I think he set that. I mean, you could make a case, right? It's the Patriots, the Steelers, the Ravens. There's a handful of franchises since 2000 that are legitimate franchises, right? That nobody's perfect, and you're not the Patriots, but they won another Super Bowl, right? They get in the playoffs. And Brian and Ozzie that year, when he came in '99, kind of started this whole run that the Ravens have had. And
I don't want to belabor to hold you too long, but I've talked about this week, that this Lamar thing, taking it back to the very beginning of the conversation, and we're playing the Browns this week, and they took the number 1 pick, and we took the number 31 pick, right? So, but the continuity and the ability for Eric DeCosta to know he has a job, for John Harbaugh to know he has a job, for Joe Ortiz and Cocaine, the people that run the franchise, now that Ozzie's sort of emeritus, and that John made it through the rain, right? John was getting fired last November, right? All of this. So now they have this they have this kid that can play quarterback that they really believe in, that everybody in the building really believes in, and they're going to build a whole different way in a way that other franchises can't do that. Other franchises can't say, we're going to play analytics, we're going to build our offense around a running quarterback, even though it's never been done before, that there's some latitude here for the Ravens because of the comfort of the organization. But not comfort built on nepotism or losing, built on, hey, Steve Bisciotti trusts these people. There's not a lot of that in the league. And the places that have that are the New Orleans Saints and the Pittsburgh Steelers and the places where continuity, New England, where you are, where every year, maybe we'll have a down year. It'll be interesting to see if the Steelers are going to throw Tomlin over the side of the boat, right? After all this years of success, they're going to go 3-4 and whatever this year, right? But the Ravens had the ability to draft Lamar Jackson and do this. Not a lot of franchises where the GM's always on the hot seat and the coach is always, a 6-win year away from getting fired. They can't take on Lamar Jackson.
No, and you see the bad franchise have a lot of dysfunction. Now, some of it is they don't get the right guy, but some of it is that they don't make good decisions, right? And they don't have trust in each other. That as soon as it goes off the rails a little bit, right, you look for the next coach or the next GM.
Well, here come the Browns with the most talent they've ever had, and this guy's running the team, and maybe they don't have Bill Walsh, right? I mean, like literally, and the Browns would be the greatest example of this in the sport over the last 20 years.
The Browns, I mean that probably the poster child. Maybe the Lions or some other teams, but yeah. I mean, and really, Ozzie was a big part of that. But I think Brian coming in and giving credibility on the field really kind of set that franchise, in the right track for 20 years. I mean, a couple Super Bowls, numerous playoff appearances, Hall of Famers, Pro Bowls. I mean, it's been a great franchise, and that's kind of in '99 is when it started.
Flynn, appreciate you, man. Take care of yourself.
Right,
Tell
buddy.
the Patriots to lose a few between now and then, okay?
I'll try. You'll see him soon.
You got it. Flynn,
right,
985. I'm wearing the Super Bowl 35. It's all faded out. Some bleach got to it, but it is 20 years old. It doesn't fit. It's too big, but I like it. The BuyAToyota.com audio vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We are getting ready for Coach Billick to go in to the Ring of Honor and all of his partnership here on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, Maritime Magics this week. Tons of incredible conversations and some throwback stuff out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault. Also out on our YouTube WNSTV channel and on Facebook as well. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net. AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore sports.